controlling the masses. And now, broadcasting live from our near-Earth hub studio, we bring you this NBN special report.
Alrighty, hello everyone. It is once again time for Measured Response. Hope you all are having a wonderful evening. I am Jeff, also known as Ysengrin, and I am joined, as always, by Safer. Say hi, Safer.
Hi, Safer. Hi, Jeff. Hi, chat.
Hi, Colt. How is you're at Gen Con, right? How has that been?
I'm at Gen Con. It's been good. I am working the Pink Hawk booth again, and definitely concerned I'm going to lose my voice midday tomorrow.
Well, there's nothing like being concerned about losing your voice to then also go and do a podcast right after.
That is so true, but at least I don't have to like raise my voice because I'm in a quiet hotel room.
That is true. Though I guess I should also say, like, man, when I look at the waveforms, I go, "Oh my goodness, I talk too much on this thing." Um,
Really?
yeah.
That's what you think? Because I feel like
Uh,
I talk too much.
oh, that's yeah. I don't know. I feel like the waveforms really give me away on that part, but
Uh, that's
um,
fine.
yeah. Um,
It's probably a good thing that we both think that we're talking too much.
it probably is.
You
Yeah.
know? It's
Yeah.
like it's like a relationship where you're like I actually have this in my relationship where we both feel like we do the other person does too many of the chores. We're like, oh, we
Mm.
think that like I'm like I feel like I get away with it. I don't feel like I have to do that much. I just have to make breakfast every day and get coffee and like make like meals somewhat frequently. Um, Meanwhile, my partner is like unloads the dishwasher and does the laundry and like vacuums and stuff, and I'm like, I don't want to do any of that.
uh, I'm glad you guys have a good balance. Yeah. And have you gotten a chance to play any new things at Gen Con, or have things you're looking forward to trying to get a chance to, or are you just like at a booth all day, heads down? Well, obviously not
I
actually literally
am,
heads down, but
yeah. I mean, this morning was kind of heads down. I definitely spend most of my day uh, at the booth, and then I like work the morning shift, so I stop at like 2, go get food. I hung out with some like DC designer. Like I don't know. I feel weird name dropping. Like I feel really fucking weird name dropping. But I hung out with a a good designer friend of mine who's very well known in the afternoon, which was nice, and we both just like chilled. And then I hung out with, oh my god, I ran into an old college friend that I haven't seen in like 15 years, like completely fucking randomly. That was insane. That was so
That's
cool.
that's very
Um,
cool.
yeah, yeah. How was your week? How are you doing?
Uh, It's been I don't know. It's been a weird. It's been an up and down week for me. I had the weekend like to myself, which was a very nice thing, and the weather was amazing. And so I said, you know what? My leg's been feeling better. I gotta go for a bike ride.
Oh no.
I wake up the
Did you
next
injure
morning and
yourself?
go, oh my god, my leg hurts so bad. So
Oh,
I feel like I'm basically back to where I was like 2-ish, 3-ish weeks ago when I started PT.
oh my
So
God.
just and it's like I'm like I didn't even bike that far or that fast, but I think it's actually more the like bending over is hurting the part of my back. So don't become old people, I say in my early 30s. It's gonna hurt you. But
All your statements, but also like fucking just allow your body to recover.
yeah.
Allow your body to recover. I think that it takes longer for our brains to catch up to our age than it does our bodies. I think that's the actual like issue, right?
Yeah, yeah. I'm still used to my 20s and teens body that like can recover in just a day or two
A few
after an
days.
injury.
Right. Exactly. And so what could have been like probably a week long recovery, you're like making it to like a month plus long recovery by continuing to
Yeah, yeah. I
not
finally was like,
rest.
okay, I have to stop biking into work. I need to like walk
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
uh, but I don't know. I'm still enjoying being a dad and just lots of funny, cute little things. But people are probably here for Netrunner and not Jeff complains about his injured leg again. So let's get into some questions. Um, we got quite a good set today. I should say this is a call-in question show. We have a good number of questions today, but we definitely have seen a little fewer questions than we had in the past, which can sometimes make it a little bit hard for us to fill stuff up. So I'll be putting up a question thread immediately after today's episode, and if you have questions for us about Netrunner or I guess not Netrunner things, but probably Netrunner things, we would really like to see them in the thread. And we were trying to get some people. If there was an old question that you asked and we didn't answer it, it's probably because we missed it and forgot, not because we didn't want to answer it. So feel free to bring back up older questions. But with that preamble said, I think our first question comes to us from SSJ Speed Racer. Catching up on the ban list episode, one point confused me a bit. You mentioned that Seb losing Ashen is fine because Seb specialists can still perform just fine with him. For the record, I agree, especially with Melius gone. But you also defended the Zvidagor unban on the grounds that just because a few excellent players, parentheses, specialists if you will, were posting results with Ob, that doesn't mean the ID is doing well overall. What is the difference between the two positions in your mind? Why is it okay for Seb to be a specialist only ID, but not Ob? To be clear, this is not me trying to say, aha, I've gotcha. I'm just trying to better understand the rationale.
So yeah, I mean this is a great question that I don't think I have like a perfect answer to, but I can there is something where I do feel like these things are somewhat different. And I think that part of it may be that renders an asymmetric game. I think that's definitely a part of this puzzle here, where when a runner is incredibly dominant, I think it's likely to be more problematic than a corp that is incredibly dominant. Not saying that either one of these, well, no, I mean, both of these were incredibly dominant at the beginning of the season. So I think that that is probably one underlying aspect of the imbalance here. Um, But I also think that, we're bringing back Svitogor, but in an environment that has never existed before. We have never seen an environment where Ob had Svitogor but not Extract, whereas, bringing back Ashen would just bring back Seb back to the exact same state that it was before. And I think that we can probably, the different environments that we see across the corp meta is going to determine if you should play Seb or not. I think that's really the answer. Whereas I don't think there was going to be much that happened on the other side that made you go, oh, yes, I'm definitely going to play Ob without Svitogor or Extract. I think that's where I'm kind of landing on these things at the moment. I think the other part of it is that Seb, I think that there were a lot less people that really enjoyed playing Seb than people that really enjoyed playing Ob. Um, like I think that's the kind of unfortunate reality where if a whole bunch of people really, really, really enjoyed playing Seb, then yeah, it's probably more okay for it to be at a slightly higher power level because I just think that I think I know. I think I know exactly what it is. The If Ob is good and you don't want to play Ob, you can probably play another corp that's going to be still good in a tournament setting. The way that Seb was before, it very clear in a way was the single deck to play, and players would go into tournaments feeling like they were at a disadvantage if they weren't playing Seb or didn't feel like playing Seb or didn't want to put in the time to playing Seb. And I think that is a problem.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point, and not the one that I was thinking of on this. Like, I think there is a you made a bunch of things that I think I all agree with, and like I emphasize in different levels. Like, I think there is, like, to be honest, like I think your point of like there are people that really enjoy playing Ob, and like a significant number of them, and it's been part of the meta for a long time, does matter, right? Like, um, you know, like I'm not expecting Precision Design to get banned anytime soon because it's just like it is a style of Netrunner that has like defined what Netrunner is, and so it gets it's allowed to be a little bit more powerful than it quote unquote should be. I think by a lot of metrics, um, and also like something we talked about also is like there's a lot of levers with these decks to tune, but there's not as many levers to tune the Seb deck because, well, I mean, it feels like there should be, but I think we haven't tried to experiment as much.
I look
I
forward to the day where Devil Charm is banned.
yeah. Um, I think there's another element of this to me, which is in like right before the mega cities, both of us said, "Oh, if we had actually had time to practice, we should both be playing Seb because it seems
Yeah.
like it's really good into the meta." But I don't think any. This is going to be an unfair statement, but I don't feel like even seeing the obelisk that did well in the megacities, I was not like, oh, if I was good enough, I would play this. I looked at those and said, meh, these are fine, but I think there's better things. And so like there's some element of like I actually think Seb did land in the good spot and Ob kind of didn't. So it's not quite the same comparison to me. I also will saying, oh, look at Tuno, they did well with Ob. That's the same thing as a bunch of like that's something like Tuno is just a outstanding Netrunner player, and so I don't know. It's like saying, oh yeah, look, Glacier HB is fine because Rotom went and won some UK event. Like I don't. There's a level of player where I feel like sometimes you have to kind of say it's hard to judge the health of a faction or deck if a particularly good specialist does well with them. Um,
Yeah. I mean, there were some other players that were playing different styles of Ob that seemed to be performing, like the 67, 69 card Ob. Like, I don't think that was what Tuno was doing. I think Tuno had a slightly different direction than that. But I think, like, we had a pretty good consensus around the community about what Seb's power level was like and what Seb's strengths and weaknesses were before the ban list update. And I don't feel like we had that consensus with Ob in the slightest bit.
Yeah, I think there is a world where like, oops, Ob is too strong, and Sudagor just goes back on the ban list, and Worlds happens without an Ob in it. Like,
Yeah, I could
I
see
don't
that
know.
happening.
I could see that being the case. I think it, and it's like, you know, if it turns out to be really, I guess the other thing to me is, um, Seb decks like changed the way a game was played in a really profound way. And when it was really good, like if you were trying to play a tier two corp deck, like Seb presented a set of threats that no other deck in the format did, and it did it consistently and quickly, and like shaped and made the game very consistent. And like Ob also makes the game very consistent. The difference to me is there are very few Ob decks that you need specific Ob tech for. Generally, you just need a deck that can also beat a corp that's presenting you problems. And Ob is like a deck that is I enjoy a lot because it's very consistent at presenting problems to the runner, but it doesn't present problems that like in general, and this is a little bit like this is a little hand wavy for me, and I know that people will push back on it, but to me, basically every ob deck is in theory playable without the ID. The ID is used to make it like competitively viable, but it doesn't ask you to have cards just for that one matchup. Whereas Seb kind of did say your corp has to understand and be tuned for this matchup to play, which I do think to me makes a bit of a difference. But
I think putting that, mm, I think it's that ice destruction is you're referring to the ice destruction aspect, right, of Seb?
I think primarily, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that that is pretty reasonable. Where ice destruction is definitely I shouldn't say taxing. It is exploiting corpse or challenging corpse on a different axis than pretty much any other decks were doing at the time, and that's not a bad thing for the game in general. I don't think like ice destruction is a bad thing for the game, but when it is too good, it is very, very warping. So
Yeah, I think it's a little bit like it was the ice destruction combined with like you actually had like said was the runner that was happiest to play transfer of wealth, so you had both ice destruction and credit denial and some really good anti-asset play. So you just had this like whole package. But
yeah,
you
I
know,
mean, you had the best late game because you had some inevitability. So yeah,
yeah. But
yeah,
I think we've yeah. I think it yeah to me also yeah the asymmetry part of it does matter, and that's actually almost probably the more important part to me of like yeah corps do centralize less. You can generally find a corp that is a second best corp or a basically as good corp, and it's a little bit hard to do that on the runner side a lot of the time. Um, anyway, let's move on to the next question so that because we've somehow already gone for 20 minutes. Well, not quite, but you know who's counting. Uh, this question comes to us, I believe, from Meteor, though I'm pretty yeah. It's got. Do you think lowering trash costs has actually been good for the game? Usually, there are, in my opinion, three broad schools of thoughts regarding how to beat assets: ignoring them and dome centrals slash where the agendas are, assess the board and try to trash the most important pieces to disassemble the corp's game plan, or trash everything and suffocate the board out. Yes, I stole this from Whiteblade. Shh. I feel that whilst high trash cost assets were a result of overly powerful tech, it did lead to the trash everything strategy being quite difficult to pursue. In my opinion, it's not necessarily a bad thing, as it gave the corps the ability to build their board state and reliably land assets on the board. Right now, the state of the general runner econ, the availability of strong asset tech and Asimont Fencer, Solidarity Badge, Audrey, and the lowering of trash costs, I feel like it's easier than ever to just suffocate a corp out in a way that has forced the game to be less interesting. Decks like Flood PD aren't really asking you what the card is, or we need not be rewarded for checking a face down, or we need excuse me, or we need the reward for not checking a face down to be extreme to compensate for the vulnerability. Even something like triple install through remotes on turn one feels remarkably unsafe to gamble run the table compared to pre-rotation. Is this more a case of runners are too rich? Do you actually disagree and think that no, asset trash costs are fine? How do you feel about how easy or hard it is to get a board to stick in relation to trash costs? Is this just a case of some third underlying issue? Uh, Example, runner's ability to beat gear checks via pinhole threading and other ice cheating. So quite the long question. Um,
Yeah. Um, I mean, okay, I'm going to start at the top, which is, do I think that lowering trash costs has actually been good for the game? I think yes. I think I'm pretty happy with the direction of where things have gone and how it's impacted the gameplay. I think that previously there was way too stark of a difference between not having the tempo to find the Rashida and getting the Rashida off and, slamming a Miss Bones and just completely destroying um, a corpse like asset plant entirely in matchups being, about how early did you find your bones. Um, I think that that was clearly not great. I think that lowering the trash costs as those things rotated has panned out relatively well. I think that you still have to how all of the trash costs feel right now is you can sometimes afford to pay for 4 trash costs, but you have to do it at the right time, and it has to be a really critical thing to trash. I think that paying 4 to trash a Tranquility Home Grid in a matchup where it's not particularly important is completely a losing play at this point. Um, I think 3 actually does feel fairly expensive, but it again depends on what it is. So, regoliths are seeing more and more play these days, in part because they have a 3 trash cost, and sometimes when the runner trashes one when they shouldn't, that can be very detrimental to them. Um, and then 2, I think feels fairly manageable, fairly achievable, even on the cheaper side. But you still can't just constantly be paying 2 trash costs on everything willy nilly, because the corp should be able to find a way to leverage that and exploit that and oppo you, or make you sad for using that much tempo on keeping their board state down. So I feel
yeah,
like things are definitely in a better place than where they were before. That doesn't mean that there aren't still improvements to be made. And I think that the big thing that we're feeling right now is that we have Lou and companions, like, yes, Fencer, but you also just have all of this other drip economy that and daily casts that spread out and even out all of your long-term econ, so that the trash costs themselves don't feel as impactful as they will, the second that Lou is not particularly meta, or the companions rotate, or you know daily cast is on the chopping block or whatever.
yeah. I was gonna say I think there's two things that stood out to me there. One is said like, oh, if the runner goes and does this stuff, like in theory, they should be opening up to other punishments. And I think one of the things I actually quite like about this meta is like, even in asset heavy decks, as someone who's played like a ton of Alco, like the ice matters a lot in that matchup. And like
Yeah.
the the I really don't like the play pattern of, okay, as the corp, I'm going to install 3 cards out, and the only protection is like the oppos in my deck, and then they're too expensive for you to interact with. I don't like that play style very much, of just like keep throwing cards out over and over and over again. And so I like that because there are more cards that are relevant with 2 trash costs as the corp, you are really have to figure out what's the extra thing I do to protect this. But 2 is also still not free, right? It's like if you're not playing Lou, 2 credits is a significant offset because you're also spending a click to go after these assets and things. So I think like I'm actually pretty happy with where things are. I would say like pinhole being so good at bypassing ice, um, I think like is going to continue to be a problem, and pinhole is a very impactful card that like you know is solving it's like solving one problem and creating a bunch of other problems. It's a little like you swallow the spider or whatever. um and like I think it's definitely I've been thinking more and more about how much it uh distorts the early game play of Netrunner quite a bit. um but yeah, I think it's like, yeah, the I think lots of drip is a problem for the game, but we've known that for a long time. And I don't actually think that I don't think higher trash costs would make the game, it might make the game more balanced for people that want to just put assets on the table and like build a game plan out of that. And I know there's a lot of people, some of them good friends of mine, that like that's their favorite thing. I think for me personally, I like where we're at right now a little bit more, where even your more asset heavy decks are thinking a lot about their ice and their ice placement and like how to leverage that aspect of the game even in a deck that's focused heavily on the assets it plays.
Yeah, I agree. I've got nothing more to add.
Cool. Let's see. This one I don't actually think I have that much to say on, even though I should. But this comes to us from Cold Lava. What should I play at Continentals? And then similarly, what should I be prepared to play against that hasn't been around but now might be? Now that the ban list's been a pretty big shakeup, is there anything that people have had time to play? That are there new things to be aware of?
I was gonna say I feel like Kolov is going to be a better resource at answering this question than we are going to be right now.
Yeah, I think honestly we're both a little bit out of touch. Obviously Ob is something that people should be playing or being practicing against.
Yep.
But
And you
outside
should
of
be
that,
prepared to
yeah,
play into R plus, but I don't even think that.
I don't
I
think
mean,
you
I'll be
actually need
curious
to
to see
worry
where
about
people
it.
go with R plus, but like I think that it's one of those things where you can't even prepare for it because the deck that makes R plus actually like worth really thinking about and considering you're not going to have practice into because it's going to be something that's new.
Yeah. I mean, I think people should play 2x compilation Ari, but if you don't want to be
Hmm.
a sicko, there's a lot of good options to play for. So yeah, I don't
Definitely
think.
think people should get more and more reps into like loosely hot because I think
Hmm.
that more people are going to be playing that after Milius not being around and not making Crim's life entirely sad.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah.
Well, yeah. So
So I
sorry that
guess
we don't
we could
have
just
have much to
handle this
say
on
about
both
it.
sides. So like,
We'll have we'll have to try and come back to this in like a week or two when we had a little more time to actually get back into playing Netrunner. Uh,
I mean, the real thing will be after Cabin, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Which I'm realizing like we should probably do one from Cabin now that I'm thinking
Yeah,
about it.
I was thinking
Do
about that
we,
too.
oh my God, do we just only take bear questions? That'd be so funny. Sorry.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, we'll have to that would be
yeah,
great.
we'll
We'll see if
have
we
to
can
think
make
about it.
that
But
work.
I think the band gun list is like incredibly fun and people should be playing it. I'm not gonna call it like the best deck ever, but like, oh my God, it's so much fun. Um, should get practice and reps into that.
Oh,
Uh,
Continentals is tomorrow. I forgot about that. Well, cool. Well,
wait,
then
which
we'll have a much better
Continentals is
answer next
tomorrow?
week. I think Cascadia.
Oh
Um,
my gosh. Oh my gosh. Okay, well, I guess we'll have a better answer for this after we see the results from
Yeah. I mean, like Cold
Continentals
Lava, I
tomorrow.
will say you have the nicest possible thing because you like to play Ob. There's going to be a lot more. Well, actually, Moosely Hot is probably a decent matchup into Ob. But like I think it's a matchup that you can outskill if you practice. And then I think we're going to probably see even more Lou because the Ob decks that are coming back are going to be asset based. Alco is still around and asset based. Um, like maybe you want to play against like the world's last year's world's Leo deck and just find a way to like just put in trains and see how that goes. But those would be like my new things that I'd be looking at, and everything else I actually think feels like fairly known. I feel like R plus, like I don't know. Part of me is like I think you can probably just beat R plus by playing a deck that has Sure Gamble and daily casts and like some
Clean
amount
getaways would
of
be great. Clean getaways
yeah.
are great.
Yeah, just like ways to play on tempo. I don't think the deck is doing anything except playing on tempo, really. So,
Yeah, I lost to some bladderwrits. Do we go over that? Oh no, that's for next
oh
week.
no, yeah, yeah, that's
That'll
probably
be fun.
next week's. Is the
That'll be fun.
Bladderwort
I
running
should
you
really
down?
I should really stop playing Baz. It's an unfortunate
No,
reality.
no, 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 no. We safer. We will figure out how to make Baz a tier 2 runner.
I think I think I feel very tier two at the moment when I play it. Like I feel like I can win games for sure. It's just like the entire
It's
theory was you had okay, maybe with Ob, maybe it can be specifically tuned to have a winning matchup into Ob, and then it's worth it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, you get so many extra
People
triggers when you
find
play
a
into
way.
Ob. It's great.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's go to
Okay.
our last I'll call it our last standard related question. This comes to us from Jinxie. Ambushes. The recent meta had a fair amount of ambushes, bite and ganked, most notably. What role do you think ambushes should play in the competitive meta? Casual play? In your opinion, what makes for a good ambush design? I'm not the biggest fan of them because they feel like zero sum experiences, but I know a lot of folks love them.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I am also not the biggest fan of ambushes, and I think this is one of the honestly the hardest parts I have as a designer of like separating my own play experiences and my own preferences from like design. Um, I think that a design like Eska is probably my favorite kind of ambush, where it's actually active everywhere and it's active in places where you don't, where other ambushes are not
What?
typically
Hey,
active.
hey,
What?
Safer. Why does
Yeah.
Eska cost 3 to trash? Why do I hit it in the hand and go, oh god, this has to stay here? I now just have to lose more credits whenever I run HQ and lose an access.
Why
Why?
does it cost 3 to trash? Because because as we've covered in the modern trash cost, 2 is a pair is cheap. I mean, I think that I don't know. My personal design philosophy would put that at 2 to trash, but like obviously I did not object enough for it at being at 3 to trash. And I think that the logic of it's not a card that realistically people are going to trash anyways, and you making it a situation where it costs that much to trash, like if it's on hand, like it's probably getting trash anyways because it's coming up the ham. Like I think it's fine enough to say that the runner controlling where that card is going to be pricey, but yeah, but independent of its trash cost, Jeff, um, Eska's the kind of thing where it is a marginal effect that gives you like a dream to build around, and then
Yeah, yeah,
kind
yeah.
of like is like death by a thousand cuts, which I know is not necessarily pleasant and fun for players, but like even just like draining credits in a way that is not expected on a run that you need to care about, like that is the kind of netrunner that I tend to enjoy. I do not like hitting bites from centrals. I am more okay with bites on the table, but still not great about it. um, I think that it sucks that hitting a bullhold can be incredibly game losing, but also bullhold has doesn't take cards out of hand, which actually makes it feel a lot better to me than bite does a lot of the time.
Yeah, I mean,
um
bite is just so much of a hit, but like it's I don't know. Having been around with other versions that did less of a hit, like it's hard to make that card feel like you want to play it and have that satisfying pop, but not be as warping or
right.
like it's very trap ambushes and traps are really hard. Um,
Immersion traps are really hard, and like they do play a very pivotal role in the game's just general identity. Like the game is about face down cards, the game is about unexpected things, and I think it's good for the game when you have traps that are um, not expected in like your highly tuned tier one decks, but are things that people can play at their local meetups and have fun with. Like I think that you can produce really fun moments and really fun games when traps are involved. I just don't want them in my I don't want them in my top cut personally,
it's
you know?
it's as you're describing, like, oh, it's basically like the Shaper Big Rig stuff. Like you want it in the card pool. You want people to be
Yeah.
chasing this fantasy of this like Doom engine that runs everything down. But it's actually pretty important that it's not good. um and like I think that's true, that's very much true of ambushes. Like it is really good to have them in the game. It's actually a really good way to like make people in their first game or their first two early game experiences to have this exciting punch. And like it also, yeah, in the conceit of the design being like, yeah, I installed an advanced card on the remote. Maybe it's an agenda. Maybe it's not. And like once you're really in the game, it being an agenda is like not the like figuring out the identity of the face down card is not necessarily the most interesting part of the game, and so you can have all these other things that you can hook into and like be really interested in, but like just having a part of the game be really explainable as I have to guess whether or not that's a thing. Like it makes it approachable, leads for like exciting stories. So like I think for the most part, a lot of traps kind of work well or like have worked well in Netrunner because they have not really towed that line of being particularly good, but they're still good enough that when they go off, they're a moment that that both players can remember. Um,
Yeah, I'm thinking about it like a tiny bit more to try to put it into like I'm thinking through like the instances where I personally like ambushes and where I don't like them. And I think one, I think that you should have to pay for them. I think the corp should have
yeah,
to pay for them. I think that it's like Eureka Cipher drives me up a wall that you don't have to pay for it. That a corp can be at 0 credits and you know it's online just like
yeah,
that.
yeah. Same with
Um,
ganked. Ganked having
yeah,
the just the fakest cost of all time. Um,
yep. I do like it when ambushes and traps have to be worked towards. So Sting, I think, is like I love Sting, and that is an ambush. But I think that it is, you know, it is something that you actually have to work towards and build up. You kind of have to earn it on both sides, like of the steal and scored portion because of how it operates. If the runner's just always stealing all of them and only taking one damage at a time, it's not particularly impactful. Um, as seen by it not seeing almost any play before outco. um,
it's not a decent amount of play in PE as well, but
that is true. That's fair. Because 2 damage is a lot more than one. Um, and 3 damage is especially a lot more than one. Um, if you manage to turn it on. But like I like that Sting is one of the like you score it out and now the two other Stings in your deck now become more of a threat. Like so it really feels like it was an earned thing and the timing of it matters. It also makes it a more varied experience from game to game where a card like bite is just like you hit it. It's like, okay, well, I happen to hit the bite, cool. It's gonna kind of blow me up and I always have to be playing around it. Where Sting kind of it just ebbs and flows. There's sometimes where you want to be playing around Sting more in the early game and you don't care about a late game. There's sometimes where you really don't care about playing around it in the early game and you really need to play around in the late game. Just that as an experience I felt like is I enjoy Sting a lot more from both sides of the table. Um,
it's funny.
and
I
then the
think
one
like I just to jump in for a
go
second,
ahead.
like to defend bite for just a second. Except in this last meta, I've never minded playing around it. I think when it's like part of the meta, and like there have been decks that I thought like having a one of bite or at the time snare like both made sense for the deck and was like quote unquote good gameplay. I think it's the like to me it's the how free it was in the previous meta. Like to me that's one of the most important things. The ambushes need to be actually quite expensive. And doesn't have to be credits in every case, but like it needs to be difficult for the corp. If they're going to be big and pop, like if they're going to be punchy, they have to also be expensive. And I don't know that they always like. I think both ganked and the amount of money that Melius U was printing plus the recursion made some like part of the cost of ambushes is like they don't do anything if the order doesn't touch them, and so it's a lot of card slots. But like when you have free card slots because you're getting your cards back, it it makes ambushes set like less interesting.
Yeah, like I'm not here to completely slander bite as a card, and I think that last meta was very different for it. Like last meta bite was not an okay. It was not in an okay place in my opinion because recurring bites and always having access to that effect and having the economy to afford it is like very much invalidates like what's supposed to be the downsides of it. Um, but I think back also to, you know, basically Alco going into Worlds last year and how it like the best versions were on 1 and sometimes even 2 bytes. And me personally, I didn't enjoy the games against Alco more because they had those cards in their deck, right?
Mhm.
Um, and again, it's not like this is in no way, shape, or form like a judgment call on how people like to play. This is just me personally. Like
Yeah.
I far more preferred when games were less coin flippy on if and when I hit those bytes, um, and constantly playing around them as a criminal enjoyer was not fun.
Yeah.
Um, and then having anarchs constantly to go around and be like, I just don't care is like, okay, cool.
um,
This actually is also like we're saying bite a lot, right? But I think that book holds can have the same dynamic, just depends on the meta and the general set of circumstances. And then the one other really big case I wanted to highlight is actually a card that we haven't referenced yet. Um, it's the one that gives
cerebral.
tags that
Oh,
no, not cerebral, never cerebral.
cerebral overrater is one of my all-time
No,
like card I hate the
no,
most, even though I don't know. Like I think I've only lost like I've maybe lost to it once in a game that like I cared about, but like it's just a card that has it's like the
yeah.
biggest pet. It's way oversized my mind. But the card I think you're thinking of is Check as Scion,
Thank
which
you. Check is
also
Scion. I think
doesn't have a cost for the corp to trigger, which is just again wild to me.
it doesn't have
Um,
a cost for the corp to trigger, and it really should. But outside of that, Check is Scion to me has the outside of that and its interaction with Proptivist, but that's a Proptivist problem. I think Check is Scion is the probably the best ambush from a design perspective in the game currently, besides
mm,
Eska. Um, I really like that it has a clear focus and game plan for specific use cases in yellow. In yellow decks, I think that its coolest case is being able to protect upgrades, right? And I think that
mhm.
it is a ambush that you hit it. It's not immediately losing, right? It doesn't just like completely dump your hand or get rid of critical cards. It is asking you to have a certain economic tax to be able to touch it and deal with it. Um, but it just sets up yellow to then do more cool things if you do touch it and you get into a point. And I think that that is like it is a almost an enabler ambush card in that way. Um, so to me, I personally like Jack as Scion. Doesn't fire off of centrals, right? So it is definitely doing the whole like mind game things. But I love, I had an Epiphany game recently where I use Epiphany, I find a check of Scion, and I install it over top of a Vlad City grid that I had installed. And my opponent,
Mhm.
knowing that it was a Vlad grid from earlier, um, goes, I think that's a check of Scion. And we can play those like that mind game, but it's not like it's not the same. Oh, hey, I'm just going to constantly advance this, and then until you have to check it, and then and you flip the coin to see if this was
Yeah, yeah.
a
Oh yeah,
Eureka or a
clearinghouse
Cypher.
is actually like a. I don't like the clearinghouse Ertica cipher dynamic that is in Gateway. Um,
Yep,
I think
yep.
I think that's a pretty bad dynamic, unfortunately. But I actually Cold Lava did have one question that I don't think it's going to take us too long to answer. Um, what's your opinion on an MVT like ambush? So that stands for Mumbad Virtual Tour, which was a ambush that I believe said the runner when that runner accesses this, they must trash this card if able, and it cost 5 credits and had no other text. That was relevant. There was some other text on there, but not relevant for this discussion.
Let's ignore the fact that it costs 5 trash costs for a second. Let's say that it costs like 3 in the current meta. Love it. It's cool. I think that we may have even put a card like that into the earliest point, like things of vantage point testing.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, yeah. I was about to say the
Yeah.
card that I think it became, but that's not relevant. Um,
Wait,
but
what
like,
card? Do you remember? It wasn't
I think
Nesca, right?
Mankoda
Was it?
Langate Grid at one point had an MVT style
Oh,
effect.
yeah. I
That
think you're
card,
right.
that card had a lot because I think that's where it started from, and then we kept playing around with different iterations on the idea. Um,
Yes. Yes, you're right. Because at one point it had that effect, but it still gave you the recurring credits. And then we had it instead increase the. I think maybe it was an asset at the time. I don't remember,
yeah, it had a bunch of
but
that card went through a lot of versions.
it
Um,
did.
yeah, I kind of don't agree. I actually think it's I hated the design, but maybe that was just because it cost 5. I think it was like, man, I've been seeing so many arguments about trace in a couple different places. But it had this like trace dynamic where like if you knew it was a card and you could like spend a credit before you went to access against an asset deck, like it was optimal to like do a sequencing where you would access at 4 credits rather than 5 credits, just so that you would like not go off,
Not
like you
have to
wouldn't have to
trash it. Yeah.
at the right time. And like there's a part of me that's like, yeah, that there's like a part of that that's cool, and like actually a part of it where like lowering the credit threshold actually makes it like less, it actually maybe makes the card a little bit less interesting because it's like you're not gonna like, oh, I'll make this run on 2 credits because there's mini MVT around or something, right? It's actually just better to go over the top then. Um,
Yeah, I
I,
think the things I like about it is again, I like the economic denial, or like I like the you know asking the runner to play the econ game, right? And then it does turn on like trash triggers, which I think is can be devastating, but on the whole, I think is fairly interesting for the game. You know?
yeah, I think the other thing for me is like it really was the like, oh, I don't want to put any ice in my deck. I just want to put assets out every turn, and like so to me MVT is doing something that ice, it's doing the thing that like ice is meant to do to me, more so than like, oh, it's an ambush that like, oh, the runner's going to hit this sometimes and lose 5 credits. It's like, no, I'm just going to it was free, it was face down, so if the runner acts in the wrong order, they just get blown up, right? And I think that was the things I didn't like about it. But I think you're right.
Sure.
There's things that it did that are like good.
Yeah. I think the things that I like about it is that when runners make runs, it should be sometimes a risky venture and saying, hey, you now have 2 or 3 less credits than you originally planned for your turn, and now you have to deal with that. I think that's overall probably a thing that would be good for the game. I don't think it should necessarily cost. It shouldn't drain 5. 5 is way too many. Um, it shouldn't necessarily cost the corp 0, but I don't know what that would look like. And I also think that the card effect on its own can't be 2 or 3, and that's all the card does. So it's like it's a weird place for a card like that to be in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
cool.
But I don't know. I could maybe see it as like an agenda, like a 3-1, where it's like the runner has to steal this. It
Oh, you
costs.
mean Oracle Think Tank?
I mean, Oracle Think Tank is like close, but like I don't know. Imagine like a 3-1 that says like as an additional cost to steal this, pay 4, but you have to. I don't know.
Yeah,
Hopefully,
when
you
you
get my
steal
point.
this,
It's
oh
also not when
goodness,
you steal this, the runner loses 4 credits or whatever. Right?
it's
It's
yeah,
like
when the runner accesses agenda, they lose 4 credits. If they did not, uh, they do not steal this agenda or something like this.
right. I mean, it's probably like the runner can only steal this agenda if they have 4 more credits in their credit pool. When the runner steals this agenda,
This
they lose
agenda, they
four
lose four
credits.
credits. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
like that. Yeah,
Okay.
it's probably that. But then also things like I would probably wouldn't put that on just as a 3-1 because like okay, cool, that's like mean, but it's also like gives you like 0 tempo and it's a 3-1. So
Yeah. Yeah.
like
So now you need to put an upside on the other half of it too, or you need to make it
yeah,
a
so now I need to have
4/2.
3 different lines of text on this card,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then we can't print it.
No, just make it a 4/2, and then it can just be then it doesn't need that text. Then it's just an NAPD contract. Um,
Yeah, I was like, we're making an NIPD contract.
Yeah,
Which,
yeah,
by the
redesigning an
way, one of my
APD
favorite cards.
contract from first principles.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, NAPD contract. What a great card.
What a great card. I still such a silly the it had one unnecessary line of text and led to so many game losses because of that one unnecessary line of text, which is very funny.
Yeah, it was scaled with bad pub, right? That was the
Yep, yep. And like it got played against Val so often and it got scored still as a 4-2 and like no one ever remembered. I remember yeah, the last event I played it at, I definitely scored a 4-2 against the Val and both neither of us remembered until like multiple rounds later. Like
damn.
anyway. Um so we've got a couple of questions that are not focused on standard. We've got a little bit of time for them. Uh, this first one comes from RG Delado. Uh, what are your what is your thought process regarding the startup format? I have a lot of love for startup and sometimes preferred it over standard due to the stronger design cohesion. But I often wonder if its experience actually hurts the game more than, or sorry, if its existence actually hurts the game more than it helps. Both because it fragments an already small community and because I assume it's not really possible to design cards for both formats simultaneously. But I'd love to hear if that's not the case. Do you have any fun design dev stories where startup was a major part of a decision making?
Um, I don't know. Do you want to?
Yeah, I can
I
start
almost
on
feel
this
like you
one.
should start on this one so that I can
Yeah,
then smack you.
yeah. So I have at times been really hostile to startup. I have cooled on that quite significantly. Um, I think like the reality is while Netrunner is a small game, like startup having standard and startup and the turn like having more than just standard as a format is good for the game because it gives people more like having more options is good. Having like 50 different formats, not great, but having three formats for, plus some more like there's some depending on how you count, there's probably like 5 or 6 actively played Netrunner formats by some small group of people and the community is large enough to support that. Like, if the community was 6 people, having 6 formats would be a problem. The community is big enough that it can handle a couple extra formats. I think honestly, some of my beef was way more about communication stuff of people pushing startup than actually startup itself. And I, you know, trying to do some self growth and recognize that I was also not helping on the message there. I will say for me personally, I think it's right now startup is um it doesn't like it's not a format for me. So I don't actually have a ton of opinions on it. I I will say personally, I think it is in my playtest experience quite difficult to make a card that is designed for startup when you only get somewhere between 65 and 100 cards a year. Um, for the entire community, and a lot of the attempts to make a startup viable card that was not a standard staple ended up being just a stinker card that no one wanted to play. And then trying to say, oh, this card has to be at this number for standard, but this number for startup. Like, I know which way I think that should go every time. Um, but I don't know. That's sort of my overall thoughts. I think I had some more thoughts about this question earlier, but they're kind of drained out of my head. Um,
Yeah, so
so
I'm trying to think of the funny design and dev stories for startup recently. And what's interesting is I actually can't think of any like particular recent ones. So for example, like the most recent set to have hit dev deadline, I legitimately can't. It is a set that is, I think, going to be fairly conducive to a startup environment, and yet I don't think that we made many, if any, decisions that were strictly like, here's what's going to happen in startup, or even like here's going to strictly happen within standard. I think that it more and more I've been finding that like the answers is probably the correct it's this is the correct decision for the game on the whole. And some of the times the specific formats have specific problems that need to be solved, but that card's balance, right, is probably just like a universal balance thing. So for example, uh, Rent Rioters is a card that we thought would be, you know, good in startup because because startup is a lower power format, and so like the credit gain is just going to be good there. And I have not played enough startup, and I need to check in with the startup curation folks to like double check on this. But I'm fairly confident that Rent Rioters, while playable, is not like a some gigantic staple within startup. And I don't think that Rent Rioters would, if it was one more credit payout, break startup, you know, even if it would be played a lot more in startup as if it had plus one credit. I don't think it'd breaking startup at that point. So I think more and more I'm just like card balance is a card balance. And how good the startup environment is partially going to be on the conceit of the set. And also like, I mean, startups, I think startup, I've heard that startup is in a pretty good place right now. And I think that that's entirely because of the work that the startup curation team does. I think that like that team has managed to do a lot of really good work in testing different cards and environments and then putting that testing into action and coming up with a format that feels good to play and hits on its goals. And so I don't know, like I as like a dev person, like I want to make their lives easier whenever possible. So if they go like, hey, this is a consistent thing that's happening in startup, or like, hey, when sets are designed this way, it causes these specific problems for us. But like Vantage Point should have been probably the single hardest set for startup
I
because
mean, kind of, but it's also, I don't know. To me, it's like it was meant kind of to be a compliment to Gateway. So like filling out a
no,
thing.
no. I mean, like, yes, it was
Oh
intended
no,
to
no, I'm
fill
sorry. I'm thinking
holes.
of Elevation. You're right. No, Vantage
Yeah,
Point
you're thinking of
was fixed
elevation. I
holes
was
and
like,
standard. Yeah, yeah. No, I
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
keep
Like
doing that swap in my head. But
elevation was in fact like was like a kind of like not meant for startup set, but it was intended to be like a part of core, which means it's a foundational set, which means it's going to be a huge part of startup all of the time. And the you know ups and downs of elevation will startup will continue to live with. But Vantage Point, who buddy, like
yeah,
we did not. The entire premise of Vantage Point was for standard,
yeah, yeah.
so
I was I
we
think maybe just to keep us a little bit on time a little bit, but I want to interject one little thought and I'll let you finish yours. But like I do think some of startup is like it feels very like it puts some requirements on what needs to be in a set for standard, and I think the like startups that people have really enjoyed have been standard sets that I haven't always really enjoyed. Um, and I think a lot of what I see people saying of like, oh, this was my favorite startup format was also usually their first startup format, um, which just kind of I don't know makes me like not want to prioritize it when thinking about the game as a whole. But that's also me being very selfish and wanting everything for standard all the time. So yeah,
I I think that I believe, and we'll see if this ends up panning out. But I really believe that generally speaking, what's good for Netrunner as a game is good for both of the formats, and I think that a set like Borealis had its own unique set of like flaws that we can now like look back on and learn from and understand. Um, that yes, it was very good for startup, in part because startup was born out of that. I think, but
not
I
quite,
guess there
but
was Ashes startup. Was
yeah,
there an Ashes
there
startup?
was there was an Ashes startup basically came into existence with Gateway release. So there was an Ashes Gateway update startup that was like for a lot of people the high point. That was like when startup I think hit its highest popularity because it was Gateway's out. come and play this new thing. Um, and like
But
it was a good way
also,
to onboard people, or that was the way. That's at least how it was pitched.
right. I mean,
And that
that makes sense, but it's also like core. I don't know. Um,
yeah,
sorry, I think that like we will see a future. We'll see what happens in a not too distant future set release where um startup where we have a set that makes sense for in a startup environment, and it's also still probably going to be a pretty exciting standard set. Like I think that both of these things can exist.
yeah.
You know,
I think that's true. Is that like startup at its best is like there have been other good formats in the past of Netrunner that are take good sets of cards, put them together, but they're less than the full of standard. And I think that can still be good.
right? Yep.
Um, so yeah, um,
Yeah.
yeah. I think to me, still the funniest story. Well, no, this is not a funny story. It's more mean. So we'll save it for another time. Um, and we've got two more questions to hit, which I think we can just barely clear. Um, there we got two questions. One from Quail and one from Music for Plants. They're the same question. Music for Plants is longer, so I'm going to read that one out. Has NSG considered doing balance updates to card themselves along with ban lists? It's such a missed opportunity when a card is such a mechanical thematic awesomeness, but just misses the mark in terms of power level. A difficult thing to properly gauge during a closed playtest, and therefore gets forgotten. Cards like Rotary, Detente, Cacophony, being able to nerf cards directly could also be a benefit. The benefits of such system are quite apparent. I feel like no one would really argue this. The bigger piece of the puzzle is how would you do updates to a physical card game in a way that makes sense. Is it possible? I think so. I think some things could help with card reprints and sets, or print and play with clear distinctions on which version a card is V1, V2, etc.
Well, I would say that I personally would love to do something like this, but um, I think that there's enough reasons, enough logistical like difficulties that it's not worth the effort to put
Yeah,
into it. Sadly, um,
yeah. I will. I'm just gonna jump in quickly and then let you finish. Like that's where I'm coming from as well. It's a thing I have advocated for and no longer do. But
yeah, like every once in a while, I get it in my head that I should advocate for it, and then I go, not worth the effort. Not worth the effort. And maybe one day we'll find a set of circumstances where it does make sense, but I really struggle to see that being the case at any point in the future. I think that I can come up with like I think some pretty good logistical details that minimize the downsides, but nothing ever truly completely gets rid of the potential product confusion and people having different versions of cards and that kind of thing, you know? So I think no matter how you slice it, it is never going to be a truly win-win, no mess kind of thing when you do erratas, especially like numerical erratas where players can have multiple numbers in their head and just misremember which one is correct. Um, so I don't see it happening.
yeah, I think it's like it's tricky because it's like there's a. I think the best argument is Netrunner is a small community. It's a fairly connected community, and so there being a hey, we're going to errata this card. All future sets we sell will have this number instead of that number, and you can print and play right now. Like is a thing that like is possible, right? I
Yep.
think um I think there's just to me so many challenges of like okay, but how do we you know, people don't actually like playing with proxies. Like it's such a
Yep.
funny thing where
Exactly.
it's like, oh, we people in the network community are like, oh, how proxy friendly it is, and like at my meetup that I haven't gone to in a while, but when I was going more regularly, it was like, oh, there would be 10 of us there. One person would have proxies. Everyone else had, I'm going to call them real printed cards from NSG, right? Um, and like, so people don't like the experience of printing out and putting in a card. It feels like the feel of having a thing is part of the experience of playing a board game. If the tactileness and the real world aspects of this weren't a thing we valued, we would be doing a different hobby. So like there is a thing of just like, oh, just print proxies, whatever. And it's like, okay, well, the balance team decides that they need to errata a card. Okay, now they need to go and contact the templating team and the art team and the production team and the like. Okay, so now we need to print out a huge stack of these cards to mail out to people all over the world, or we need to make sure that the next time we do a set release, we need to reserve card slots in that set release to put in cards that we've already printed before but have a new number on them. And then the
And
other thing
then the
is,
next time we get stock of old printings, we also have to now replace the old card file with the new one because the old one is now out of date. But also, what happens if someone buys stock from an old one, but they didn't realize they're getting the old one with the non-errated cards in it, and then they want the updated ones?
yeah. And then also, I step out of the game for a couple months because, say, I've had a baby. I show up to my meetup. All of my cards say V1 on them. I think I'm really good. I'm in a great spot. I sit down and, oh, my opponent's played a V2 of that card and it cost multiple credits less than I thought. Or maybe it was a card I never thought about because it was so bad that why would I ever think about it? And it just happens to
Yeah.
completely hose me, right? Like, I think the it's like I think the real burden is all of those logistical things of like deciding to change numbers on a card, like getting a card from this card is like we know all of the final stuff on it to this is a card in people's hand is already a months long process. And so just being like, oh yeah, we released this card. Oh, we know what the fix is. Like maybe we don't. Like we can't keep doing updates. If we were a digital only game, like I would not be making this argument. I think it is actually the
Yeah.
logistics that are like the biggest thing
Well,
here,
it's like
really.
every single digital game does balance updates. Like it is a well-known process. It would be fine.
Yeah.
And worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, yeah, could the community handle it? Yes. Like, I think it would be not ideal. I think it would be not as friendly to new players. Like, I do actually think constant balance updates and patch notes do make things less approachable. Like, as much as I
They
will
do.
enjoy dipping my toes into TFT, the fact that every 2 weeks I basically have to learn a significant part of the game over again and figure out which 5 to 10% buff like is going to change the things I was already learning is a little frustrating. It does end up burning me out on every set. Um, but like
Yeah. I think the
it's so like
card games are slightly more approachable. Um,
yeah.
I have I have two current. There are two things that I think that I would do if but I don't know if it was like wave a wand, then like if I just need to wave a wand, that might do this. It would be printing things like a design that we liked, but it was just a numerical change as like a V2 in a future set, and it's a part of that set. We don't go back and errata the old one. We just literally go like word on the street. I think that card with slightly different numbers would do the exact thing that I was hoping it would do, and then the format would be better for it. Like be like word on the street has the same art. It's V2 and it comes out in a future set, and we ban the old one so you can't play multiple copies, and we call it a day, right? That would effectively be like a functional errata, but even that I think is still like that is something where it's like players are not used to it. It's not a typical way of doing things. I don't know how people would feel about it. I don't know if
Yeah.
people would feel
And
gypped.
it's
Be
also
like,
like, oh, you can also just like make the new card. Like it can have new art. And like it's like if we're already going
right.
to the whole process of printing a whole set, giving that a new narrative piece, a new visual piece to give it more cohesiveness and thematicness within the set, just like that effort, we're already doing all the other logistics problems. Let's just make it a new card rather than the same card v2. And like I think there's nothing that's like springing to mind, but like I feel like there's been a couple of cards that are kind of soft v2s of cards that didn't work in the past. Um,
Everything is a mixed bag. Some people do like that. Some people don't like that. Some people like just leave the card dead. You know, like
yeah,
it's
yeah. Yeah. It's like,
it is what it is.
I lost my fight for like, can we print a Trojan icebreaker because we didn't actually print any. Don't tell me that Living Mural is a real card, but so it goes.
I mean, I would
Uh,
like to print a real Trojan icebreaker at some point, but also Boomy allows you to kill icebreakers, which is a general problem.
oh, I don't expect to see any more Arasana cards printed ever. So I would be surprised, but
I mean, maybe. Um, I think Trojans are cool. I think that we should print more Trojans. It has nothing to do with Ari, personally.
yeah.
Um,
Someone did point out like Trojan is an example of an errata, and I actually think like that is a little bit of a different errata than a numbers errata to some extent because
that is
it's
adding subtypes onto cards for synergy points. That's not and making all of the things consistent, right? That we
yeah,
didn't have been consistent before. That's closer to like what the illicit errata that we did with a Vantage Point
yeah,
release.
yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I think there's there have been cards that have been errataed, and like some of those erratas I've actually been really frustrated by. But like I think in general, not doing card updates or like balanced focus errata, I think is generally the right approach for Netrunner because it is a physical game. Um, so
Yeah. I think that the other thing is I have toyed around with the idea of maybe at some point doing so and so like Safer's Netrunner specifically just as a format on JNet, not in any way, shape, or form segmenting our community even more, where I would just go in and treat it like a digital game and make all the balance adjustments that I wanted, and it would be amazing. I like
uh,
fantasize about that. I don't think it's actually
yeah,
gonna
yeah.
happen, but
Yeah, I mean there was when the game died there was someone who did go and do that. And there was some interesting stuff in there, but
yeah.
anyway, we got a last question, which I think is, I think I have some thoughts on this. You might say like, "Oh, I don't think I can answer this," but silly little hypothetical. This comes to us from Wentagon. How would you design a Netrunner Blitz format? Smaller decks, pick your starting five, put X cards in play to 5 points. That still captures the essence of Netrunner. Can it even be done? And I will say the reactions in the thread say quick draft, which I actually like. I have been dismissive of draft like sub 6 point draft Netrunner or like sub 7 point draft Netrunner as like an experience, and then I played quick draft and I was like, wait, this slaps. And I think that did a really important thing, which is it made the court play to 5, but the runner play to 6, which like worked really well for what that format was. Um, but
Yeah, I think that there's definitely a way to do like a blitz thing, but I think that like primary complaint about quick draft is actually that you have a lot of time doing the setup and then a lot less time doing the gameplay. Um, so it's like I think a proper blitz format would need to have almost no setup and then shorter gameplay. And I think that that might be somewhat incompatible with Netrunner as a whole, but I think that the primary thing that I would want to make sure that we maintain is like this kind of concept of like a game arc, and having, I guess, ebbs and flows in it. I think that's what games lose when they go to be too short. And I think that's actually one of the things with card games getting shorter and shorter on playtime. Like, uh, I guess board games also getting shorter and shorter on playtime is that sometimes they go so short where they're missing like kind of this emotional arc and emotional investment, that you get. And that's one of the nice things about playing a normal game of Netrunner is that you
Mhm.
can have like a 20-minute game and make it feel like it's a 40-minute game because like sometimes there's just these really, really intense moments where you don't know what's going to happen and you have to actually have the time to let it build. Um,
Yeah,
so
I
I
think
think that's the thing that like you need to make sure stays in a Blitz format to still make it feel like Netrunner. And like how to do that, I'm like, I don't know. I would do a whole bunch of playtesting before I could even put my like finger on what direction that could like could meet all of these different requirements.
yeah, to me, I think it would be a couple of things. Like, and this is like very much leaning from the I think quick draft actually like while it is a long draft relative to play, like it's still pretty zippy on draft when both players like kind of know things. But I think to me, a couple things to that, like smaller deck is part of it. I wouldn't say pick your starting five. I actually think you basically want to be minimizing complex decisions whenever you're thinking about a quick format. And Netrunner is like a great game where like it has a lot of, you don't need the card, you don't need to make the like I have to choose between this huge decision space of what's like my starting hand because you just you instead the basic action card gives you all that complexity. Um, I think the other thing is like honestly the cards need to be a little janky and bad. Like I actually think that's part of the like Blitz format stuff being like by the cards being a little bit jankier, you're able to have more of those ebbs and flows in the gameplay compared to like if it's just like my deck is smaller and I get to my high power cards like we get to the end game fantasy faster. I think that would be a way to really kind of make the format not work. So I think there is some level of like you're probably chopping power off the top of a lot of decks. Um, but like I don't know, as someone who's done like a decent amount of like convention teaching of System Gateway, like there is a blitz-ish format. I don't know if it's a good blitz format that would keep invested players really excited. I think that's like a whole separate thing. And like one day I would love to get back to figuring out how to do I think a more structured, fast-paced draft format for Netrunner. But um,
Yeah. Yeah.
but yeah, I think that's probably gonna do it for us for today. So Safer, I'll let you go rest your voice and let you enjoy the rest of Gen Con. And thank you everyone for tuning in. Please, next week we're hoping to do a replay review. We've got one for Safer queued up, but I don't even know that's going to take us the whole time because um, it's got a little bit of the Simpsons stop hitting him, or I forget what that meme actually is. Uh, my goodness. Now I've completely lost it. So apologies for that. But we could definitely use an extra replay or two. If you have a replay from an event or you're new to the game and kind of like, hey, I don't really understand why I lost or where I lost. We'd love to do some more replay reviews. And then if you have questions for us, either from our discussion today or other questions or pondering about Netrunner, please feel free to throw a question in the question thread. And I think that's going to do it for us tonight. So thanks everyone for tuning in. I'll say goodbye and say bye, Safer.
Bye.